Hello and welcome to another intensivecarehotline.com and intensivecarehome.com live stream. Normally I do label these meetings for questions and answers emergency meeting. Today is having a different title. Today's title is 5 proven strategies to avoid ICU teams withdrawing treatment on your critically loved one without your consent. Now, thank you for joining me on the live stream, and also thank you for watching this on replay. I know many of you will be watching this on replay. If you're on the live stream now, you can type your questions into the chat pad, or if your questions are related to today's topic, you can also talk to me when I've gone through my 5 points. And then you're welcome to join me here live on the show and ask me questions directly. So before I go into today's presentation, what makes me qualified to talk about 5 proven strategies to avoid ICU teams withdrawing treatment without your consent for your critically ill loved one in intensive care. I am a critical care nurse by background. I have been working in critical care for nearly 25 years in 3 different countries, where I worked as a nurse manager for over 5 years, and where I've also worked as a consultant and advocate for families in intensive care since 2013 here at intensivecarehotline.com. I probably looked after thousands of critically ill patients and their families in intensive care over the years. I'm also the founder and managing director of intensivecareathome.com, where we are looking after long-term ventilated adults and children at home with tracheostomies, and we are employing and sending critical care nurses into the home for predominantly long-term ventilated adults and children with tracheostomies, and we are providing a genuine alternative to a long-term stay in intensive care. Currently, we're operating all around Australia with intensive care at home. Now, and if you want to support our work here, the work of intensivecarehotline.com and intensivecareathome.com, subscribe to my YouTube channel, click the like button if you like these videos, share the video with your friends and families, comment so I know what content to create next. My content is really driven by the questions we're getting, the clients we're talking to, and the interactions we're having with families and clients and patients. Okay, so, and some of you might be watching this video and you might be saying, look, Patrick, you've talked about this topic before, and I've made countless of videos about this topic, but the reality also is that I am talking to people every week that have an issue such as, hey, my family member, is in ICU. The ICU team told us tomorrow at 3 o'clock they're going to take away life support, and then my loved one is going to die. What can I do? Right? And that is highly inappropriate of ICU teams to do that. Right, highly inappropriate, and I will fight against it vehemently with all of my might to stop ICU teams from doing that, because it is highly inappropriate. ICU teams are not God, and their job is to preserve life, not to withdraw life and saying, oh, it's quote unquote in the best interest, right? And I want to really start with a question today before I dive more into today's topic. What's the urgency to kill someone? What's the hurry? What's the rush to kill someone? Right? I think that's a really good question to ask. Where is the urgency to kill someone? Right? So you can ponder this question for a moment, right? And I think it's really important that you ponder this question. Okay, so now, this week, I had an email from Denise that I want to read out that really sparked me to do another presentation about proven strategies to avoid ICU teams withdrawing treatment on your critically loved one and killing them without your consent. So let me read out the email from Denise, who says, "Hi, Patrick. It hasn't even been 2 weeks on the ventilator for my mom. She knows who we are and she can blink and not to questions. Now," Denise continues, "we are being forced to take her off the ventilator tomorrow, even worse, being forced to put her on the DNR list. She's still in there, her light is still on, not totally out. On the 9th of August of this year, she suffered a massive seizure. And now she's giving her mom's name, which I won't share. And on top of that, they're saying we need a couple of more days, at least until my brother gets to Beaufort, South Carolina from New York. They're telling us we have no control over what nursing home she will be sent to, even though it could be far away from us. What can we do? Right. Well, thank you so much, Denise, for sharing your email. Let's break down this email. So your mom hasn't even been on the ventilator for 2 weeks. She knows who you are. She's blinking and she's nodding to questions. And now you're saying you're being forced to take her off the ventilator tomorrow. So basically what you're describing to me is an intensive care team wanting to kill a patient that is awake and alert and can understand what's happening, right? So coming back to my original question, what is the urgency in killing someone? Where is the urgency in killing someone? Please let me know. Let me know in your comments. Please, intensive care teams, let me know in your comments. What do you think? Where's the urgency to take someone off at 3 o'clock off life support? Where's the urgency in that? What's the purpose of killing someone prematurely? Right? And then she carries on. We're even being forced to put her on the DNR list. Okay, so let's come to the 5 proven strategies now so that you can avoid the ICU team withdrawing treatment without your consent. So let's talk about those proven strategies. And the reason I'm saying those are proven strategies, I mean, we have helped so many families over the years saving and preserving their loved ones' lives, right? Whenever we could with our proven strategies. And where do those proven strategies actually come from? I can tell you where they come from. When I still worked in ICU, I was challenged with some situations myself where I remember coming on a shift, on a night shift, and there was a patient with a traumatic brain injury, and I start my night shift at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, I can't remember, and I walk into the room, into the bedside, and get handover from my colleague nurse, and then 10 minutes later, after handover, the doctor walks in and says, "Oh yeah, tonight at 10 o'clock, you're going to take this patient off life support because it's quote unquote in their best interest, and that's what you're going to do." And at that stage, I already knew that the family had not given consent to that. So what did I do? I said to the doctor, "Well, if you want to extubate the patient yourself and take them off life support, that's fine, because I'm not going to do it." Right? That's like executing someone, right? And then he came back to me and he said, "Oh, what do you mean you're not going to do it?" I said, "I'm not sure whether you speak English, I said, "I'm not going to do it," right? And he said, "Oh, do you mean like you are refusing my orders?" I said, "That's exactly what I'm doing." Right? And then he said, "Oh, then we have to talk, we have to talk to the managers." I said, "Well, you do what you want to do. I'm happy to go home now because I'm not going to do it." Right? Anyway, cutting a long story short, of course, the patient continued to live, and, because, I stood my ground. And I stood my ground in many other similar situations where I realized, well, I actually have a say here. Because if end of life was happening in a vacuum, they could do whatever they want, but they can't. End of life in ICU does not happen in a vacuum. I cannot stress this enough, right? There's rules, regulations, there's laws, there's policies, and the list goes on, right? So please keep that in mind at all times, that end of life in intensive care does not happen in a vacuum. If someone is telling you, "Oh, we just take your loved one off the ventilator tomorrow at 3 o'clock without your consent," assuming without your family member's consent, that is murder. That is murder, right? So please keep that in mind. But coming back to Denise's email, right? It's also a case of, Denise, you are talking yourself out of having power here. You are saying, "Well, we are being forced." Well, no one can force you. If the intensive care team said to you, "Well, would you jump off a bridge tomorrow?" You wouldn't jump off a bridge, would you? Right? So why are you living in that mindset, "I am being forced"? Right? You can't control other people, but you can control how you react, how you respond. Right? You are 100% in control how you respond. Furthermore, you're saying you're being forced to put her on the DNR list. No one can force you to put your mom on a DNR. No one, right? Unless your mom has an an advanced care plan where she says, I want to be DNR, that's a completely different story, right? But you haven't made reference to that your mom is having an advanced care plan, right? So let me repeat here one more time, Denise. No one can force you to take your mom off life support without your consent. No one, right? Nobody, right? So that's number one. Go and ask for the hospital policy about end-of-life care, and you will find, I can assure you, you will find that the end-of-life care policy will say that nobody can take anyone off life support without patient or family consent. And if they do that, they're breaking the law, they're breaking their own hospital policies, and that is a crime. That is a crime, right? Okay, so go and ask for the hospital policy for end-of-life care and end-of-life decision-making, and you will find, I can guarantee you, that nobody can take a patient off life support without patient or family consent. Now, it also sounds to me like your mom is awake. Why are they not asking your mom? Are they cowards? Why are they not asking your mom? Please answer that question. Are they cowards? Right? What does your mom want? Why are her wishes not being considered in a situation like that? Please explain that to me. The same with the DNR. If your mom is awake, why aren't they asking your mom, talking to her? Why are they overriding anyone? Please explain that to me. Those are all highly relevant questions, right? So that's one proven strategy. Go and get the policy for end-of-life care and decision-making around end-of-life care. Number two, go and look at your state or federal laws, depending on the country you're in, right? Go and look at your laws. Once again, I can't stress enough that end-of-life care does not happen in a vacuum. It happens in a framework. And the framework is to preserve life. That must be the framework. Anything else would be undermining that. So number two, next proven strategy, look at your local laws. And once again, you will find, I can guarantee you, that nobody can take someone off life support without patient or family consent, right? Very simple, very simple. And it's also common sense. Think about it. Is it common sense that ICU teams can say, oh, tomorrow at 3 o'clock, we'll just take your mom or your dad off life support? That's not common sense, or is it? Right? Always bring it back to common sense, please. Okay. Next proven strategy is to get access to the medical records, right? So by you getting access to the medical records, you can get a second opinion, right? And we can give you that second opinion here at intensivecarehotline.com, right? Very simple. And also that buys you time, right? That buys you time where you can say, hey, I need access to the medical records so I can have an expert look over the medical records and give me a second opinion. Once again, common sense, right? ICUs pretend that common sense is not applicable in situations like that, but that nothing could be further from the truth. Okay, and again, we have saved lives by looking at medical records and by telling families, hey, there's no need for end-of-life care here, because if they do X, Y, and Z, then the life can be saved, can be at least prolonged, right? When I say we have saved lives, we have saved many lives and patients going home. But what I can confidently say, we can at least preserve life and buy time, right? If someone is going to die, that depends on whether the situation is a real or a perceived end-of-life situation. Let me quickly highlight the difference between a real and a perceived end-of-life situation. So a real end-of-life situation is that, your loved one is critically ill in intensive care, no amount of treatment, surgery, fancy equipment, whatever can save someone's life. That is a real end-of-life situation. Contrast that with a perceived end-of-life situation. A perceived end-of-life situation is just that. It's a perception, right? It doesn't necessarily reflect reality, right? So you need to ascertain very, very quickly when ICU teams talk about end of life and withdrawing treatment, you got to ascertain very quickly, is this a real or a perceived end of life situation? And knowing the difference will make all the difference, right? So most situations in intensive care are actually perceived end-of-life situations, not real end-of-life situations. Why? Well, the evidence is there. The research suggests that about 90% of intensive care patients survive. That's 9 out of 10 intensive care patients surviving, leaving intensive care alive, right? So the odds are in your loved one's favor. Very simple, right? So therefore, most end-of-life situations in intensive care are actually perceived end-of-life situations and not real end-of-life situations. The evidence is there. So for the intensive care team to say, oh, tomorrow at 3 o'clock, we're going to withdraw life support, is going against the grain of what is actually really happening in ICU. And it shows that many ICUs have potentially ulterior motives. There could be, the motives could be around bed management, staff management, resource management, but also about population control, right? How much power do we want to give the general populace to be in control who lives and who dies? Right? We've seen that during COVID, all the madness. You know, families not being allowed to go into ICU, not being allowed to visit their loved ones, right? And families still being traumatized from that period. It's terrible, it's shocking, and it must never happen again. Okay, the next proven strategy ties in with the previous one, to get access to the medical records. So the next proven strategy is really to get professional advice and professional advocacy, like we do here at Intensive Care Hotline. So I'll give you an example. I'll give you numerous examples, but I'll give you a couple of examples so you really understand how this ties in. A few years ago, we've been asked to advocate for a patient in ICU because it was a very similar situation. Intensive care told the family, oh, tomorrow at 3 o'clock, we'll just take your dad off life support and let him die because it's quote unquote in his best interest, because he won't have any quality of life and blah, 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 right? Well, what is quality of life anyway? What is it? It's just a perception. Quality of life is not anything that you can measure objectively. It's a subjective perception, right? And that subjective perception about quality of life is up to you, it's up to me. It's not up to intensive care teams who think they know best and who think they can play God, right? So what can you do with professional advice like we offer here at intensivecarehotline.com? So at that stage, we looked at the medical records, right? And what we saw was this. We saw that it was documented in the medical records that the patient was quote unquote made DNR, do not resuscitate, right? And we also could see in the medical records that it was not discussed with the family. So it was a unilateral decision and the family had never been informed about it. Okay. Now, once again, that is illegal. So what did we do at the time? We worked with a lawyer who took the case to court, and the court overruled the ICU's decision within a few hours to stop withdrawing treatment the next day because they were acting illegally. They were acting illegally, not only to take patient off life support without patient or family consent, they were also acting illegally by issuing a DNR without patient or family consent, right? So, coming back to Denise's email here, where she said, oh, we've been forced to put my mum on a DNR. That's nonsense. No one can force you to put your mum on a DNR. No one. You need to push back. You need to push back. I am all for making friends, and I'm not suggesting you should be making enemies, but you need to stand up for your loved one. And what's happening in many ICUs can be highly unethical. There's a lot of good things happening in ICU, don't get me wrong, but here at intensivecarehotline.com and also at intensivecareathome.com, we are dealing with outliers and we are dealing with patients that are too hard done by in ICU most of the time. Okay, so I also need to make that very clear. Now, and last but not least, another proven strategies that we have found works by having worked with hundreds or thousands of clients and patients over the years is do not go into meetings without having an agenda in writing. So I cannot tell you how many families in intensive care come to us and they say, hey, you know, they've asked us for a meeting tomorrow. What do they want to talk about? And I say to them, well, ask them for an agenda in writing. Right? Very simple. So think about this. Any business meeting, right, in the real world has a meeting agenda. True or false? Any business meeting in the real world has a business agenda, right? Common sense. So why do ICU teams ask for family meetings and not have an agenda documented? Please explain to me why. Please explain to me why. Right? What is it they have to hide? What is it that can't be documented on a piece of paper? You know, what is it that can't be documented on a piece of paper? Hey, tomorrow we've got a meeting and let's talk about X, Y, and Z. I can't tell you how many families I've seen in intensive care that have been ambushed by family meetings. And they don't see it coming. They think, oh yeah, they've got only good intentions. And then they realize that they've been ambushed, right? Where intensive care teams drag them into a meeting room. So they're basically playing on home ground, right? They drag you into a meeting room and then they will, you know, dish out an agenda and saying, oh, you know, your loved one is very sick. They're not going to survive. And if they do survive, they won't have any quality of life. Therefore, it's quote unquote in the best interest to withdraw treatment and let them die. That brings me back to my question in the beginning. What's the urgency to kill someone? Where is the urgency to kill someone? Please explain that to me, please. Right? And it should be up to nobody but a higher authority or God to decide when it's people's time to leave this earth in their physical body. So don't go into meetings. If you do go into meetings, only go into meetings with a written agenda that you agree with. Because let's just say on the agenda, it says something like, oh, we need to discuss how end-of-life care is being performed for your family member. You go like, well, I'm not going to talk about this. What I want to talk about is, well, how are we going to save my family member's life? That's what I want to talk about. So don't play by their rules. Do not. You know, when it comes to those meetings, intensive care teams know what to say. They know how to say it. They know when to say it. And they know what not to say. Think about that. They've been doing this many, many times over and over again. For you, this is a completely new experience. And unless you know what you're doing, you'll be standing on losing ground, on very shaky ground. Right? So what's the solution to this, even preempting this? Because prevention, as you know, is much better than cure. So the prevention for situations like that is to have an advanced care plan and to have clear documentations around what you want and what you don't want. Right? That's where clear documentation is coming from. Right? So, and it's critically important that you document what you want and what you don't want. Right? So those are 5 proven strategies. I have probably made videos in the past where I even talked about 10 proven strategies, you know, how to avoid ICU teams withdrawing treatment without your consent. And I can go on. And, you know, it also comes down to asking the right questions. It could come down to you hiring a lawyer. Having said that, what we've also found over the years is the lawyers often don't have as much insight as we do about the nitty-gritty, about local policies, hospital policies. They don't understand that when we look at medical records that we can very quickly find out whether, again, it's a real end-of-life situation or a perceived end-of-life situation, right? So it is incredibly important that you understand what is happening in those situations and that you get expert advice without getting intimidated by intensive care teams and their perceived power. Because that's what it is. It is perceived power. It is not real. The minute you put their power to the test, you will see that it will crumble. We've seen this many times. The minute I start talking to them and I ask all the relevant questions, I say, hey, if you withdraw life support there tomorrow at 3 o'clock without patient or family consent, that's murder. And then I watch how they react. Oh. All of a sudden they get very defensive, and all of a sudden they retreat from their original decision, right? Because they literally watch if you will let them get away with murder. That's what they're literally watching for, right? So be very, very mindful about, you know, your questions that you're asking, about your positioning of the situation. And also, if you are intimidated by the slightest, you'll be fighting an uphill battle, right? If you'll be intimidated by the slightest, you'll be fighting an uphill battle. You can't be intimidated, right? And you can't run a situation like that on fear. You need to push for what is best for your critically ill loved one. And sometimes it could be as simple as, you know, that your critically ill loved one may not survive, but you just need time. And who is intensive care to say you can't have that time, right? Sometimes you just need more time to see that this is what's really happening, you know, that it is a real end-of-life situation, not a perceived end-of-life situation, and so forth. And that's okay. You know, and that's okay. You know, just run your own ship, run your own show, and do not be intimidated by anyone or anything, and get the help you need to turn these situations around. That is what you need to do, right? Okay, but there was a second part of Denise's email where Denise says, and on top of us saying we need a couple of more days at least until my brother gets to Beaufort, South Carolina from New York, they're telling us we have no control over what nursing home she will be sent to, even although it could be far away from us. What can we do? Well, again, you are to a degree contradicting yourself, because you're talking about end of life and then now you're talking about sending her to a nursing home, right? So, again, similar to end of life, they cannot force you for her to go anywhere without your consent. Once again, I urge you to ask for the hospital discharge policy. I urge you to do that, right? So, ask for the hospital discharge policy. You will see that they cannot send your mom without your consent. But here is another thing, once again, common sense. If they want to send your mom 2 hours away from home, that is not common sense, is it? Right? Now, before you might be asking, hey, is it really that they can't send my mom without consent? Yes, they can't. And I can assure you of that. Once again, similar to end of life, we've turned so many situations around with our consulting and advocacy, and we've turned so many situations around to stop hospitals from acting illegally, right? Now, can you always stop people from going or from being discharged from ICU? The exception is obviously if someone is really well enough and can walk out of a unit and can walk out of ICU, is no longer ventilated, that's a different story, but that is not the case in your situation here, Denise. Right. Okay, so that concludes for today the 5 proven strategies to avoid ICU teams withdrawing treatment on your critically ill loved one without your consent. Now, what I'll do next is I will ask some questions that have come in during the week, right? I will answer some questions that have come in during the week, that come in droves. So let me just get to my first email that came in during the week. In the meantime, please type your questions into the chat pad, or join me live on the StreamYard link by clicking on the link that I've just posted here in StreamYard. So click on the link here if you want to talk to me directly now. If not, type your questions into the chat pad, and otherwise I will just carry on with any of the questions that have come in during the week. So, what is the first question that I can answer? Yes, there's a question from Tonya who says, hi Patrick. My sister died on the 16th of August 2024. That's not even 11 days ago, not even 10 days ago. On the 15th of August, I received notice that the hospital filed for an expedited hearing to gain guardianship of my sister for the purpose of sending her to hospice. They wanted to stop giving her blood transfusions due to a shortage in blood as a result of a computer hack. Right. Okay. Tonya, I'm extremely sorry to hear that your sister passed away. Now, I know that hospitals sometimes are trying to obtain guardianship over families in intensive care. Now, that is a concern, but that also goes to show that you, as a family, you need to have your paperwork in place to have guardianship when push comes to shove, so to speak, right? So, but then again, this also beckons the question, the first question that I asked today is, what's the urgency? Where's the urgency to kill someone in ICU? Where's the rush, right? Please help me understand, where's the rush in killing someone in ICU? I don't understand. I really don't understand. Right? They wanted to stop giving her blood transfusions due to a shortage in blood as a result of a computer hack. Tonya, I don't know why your sister went into ICU, why she needed blood transfusion and so forth, right? So the question is here, what happened? You know, why did she go into ICU to begin with? You know, that is a question that needs to be asked here. So let's look at the next question. That comes from Maria, who says, "Hi, Patrick. My sister is in ICU. She was transferred back to ICU on the 2nd of August 2024 after a doctor in the step-down ICU called me screaming, saying she's terminal and has a bleed they can't locate." Well, talking about bedside manners here. He also stopped her dialysis because her blood pressure was low. When asked about the medicine they've been giving her during dialysis for low blood pressure, he said there was nothing to give her. This same doctor tried to force us to send her to hospice back in June. The hospital is aware we do not want a hospice for religious reasons. My sister's on the ventilator and she is a dialysis patient. She cannot move or speak. The pulmonary team was still trying to wean my sister off the ventilator, but I noticed no one followed the orders to switch her to tracheostomy trials. The nursing staff doesn't like to suction her. They seem to make excuses to keep her on the ventilator. The ICU doctor mentioned he sees where other doctors have stated that treating my sister is futile, but he does not agree. And I put futile in quotes. Right? I'll come to the futility aspect of this email later. Then she continues, the doctor is willing to continue care. I had to file a formal complaint against the doctor who proceeded to walk into my personal space when she realized I stopped listening to her talk, and she puts in quote, at me, about her decision to send my sister to hospice against the wishes of the family. I requested my sister's medical records and was told by an administrator that they can only be released when she is discharged. The patient portal does not include a lot of information. I was, however, able to get a CD copy of CT scans and other documents from radiology. I want an independent third party to review her medical records. My sister was off the ventilator for several days in June. She was injured while in the hospital around June 4th to the 6th this year. She had swelling and bruising on her forehead on the 6th of June, bright red blood in her trachea on the 6th of July, placed back on the ventilator on the 6th of August. No, hang on. Sorry, I mixed up the date. 6th of June, 7th of June, placed back on the ventilator, 8th of June. PEG was leaking on the 12th of June. So this was all within a few days in June. Now she has a bleed that is requiring her to have daily blood transfusions, and she's on full ventilator support. According to the wound care nurse, her pressure wounds are getting worse. I need help. Yes, of course you need help, Maria. But let's just break this down in more detail. So, first off, if inotropes or vasopressors are needed for low blood pressure during dialysis in ICU, it's very easy to switch over to hemofiltration. Right? Very easy to switch over to hemofiltration. Okay, so by you switching over to hemofiltration, right, that will decrease chances that your loved one will need inotropes or vasopressors, and it decreases the chances that blood pressure will stay low. Right? So ask for a change in treatment. That's one thing. Right? Now, the same doctor tried to force us to send her to hospice back in June. The hospital is aware we do not want hospice for religious reasons. Well, keep standing your ground. You know, if you don't want her to hospice because you believe that, you know, no one should have their life terminated prematurely, I certainly believe in that, right? Then you should be voicing that opinion. You know, it's almost like accepted practice now that we send patients to hospice and let them die prematurely. Once again, where's the urgency in killing someone? Please tell me, where's the urgency? Right? Then you're saying the pulmonary team was still trying to wean my sister off the ventilator, but I noticed no one followed the orders to switch her to trach trials. Well, why is that? You know, the nursing staff doesn't like to suction her. Why is that? They seem to keep making excuses to keep her on the ventilator. Once again, why is that? Right? So, you know, I think the ICU already has a lot to answer to here. They have a lot to answer to. Right? Then the ICU doctor mentioned he sees where other doctors have stated that treating my sister is futile, but he does not agree. So you might have come across the term futile or futility. What does it mean in intensive care or in medicine in general? The word futility means of no benefit. Now I go one step further and I say it is of no perceived benefit. Right? It is of no perceived benefit. It's just a perception. Right? Just because ICU doctors think it is of no perceived benefit doesn't mean that it is not of perceived benefit, or it is not of benefit, right? Depends on your perception, right? And the term futility in intensive care is often used to cement a narrative of end of life, right? Challenge it and see what happens, right? So I hope that answers your question, Maria. Now, let's move on to the next question. Now, while I'm looking for the next question, right, I also want to highlight once again that, you know, no one, and I mean no one, can force you to move your loved one or give consent to end of life or to DNR. Nobody. And you need to challenge it with all your might, because once again, ICU teams pretend they can do whatever they want. Okay. Then next email comes from Shantion, who says, "Hi Patrick, I need to decide what I should put in my advanced healthcare directive. What should I do?" Well, Shantion, that's a really good question. And it certainly requires some thought, right? I don't know how long you've watched my videos, how long, you know, if you're a subscriber to my blog. I don't know any of that. What I can tell you is that you need to give it some thought. What would you want if you, God forbid, ended up in an intensive care unit? Right? What would you want? Do you want to potentially go through pain and suffering? Right? To get out on the other end alive? Or are you saying, "No, I don't want pain and suffering. I'm happy just with being let go." And either is okay, right? But what I will say is this. You know, Many families in intensive care go in with a preconceived notion into ICU saying, oh, my family member would never want to live, quote unquote, live on a ventilator. Well, that should be temporarily anyway, right? And with temporary ventilation, right? Well, it's just a milestone. It's just a stepping stone to get you from A to B, right? To get your mom from A to B and get her to leave intensive care alive. That doesn't mean your mom will be on a ventilator for the rest of their days. Doesn't mean that at all, right? And therefore, you should be not be buying into any of this sort of stuff about, oh yeah, you should, it's in the best interest of your loved one to die. You need to have done some research what you think you can tolerate if you, God forbid, ever end up in an ICU, right? But I can tell you, if you have an advanced care plan that says you don't want anything to be done or you want your treatment limited, that's what will happen, right? And if no one can advocate for you while you're in ICU, that is what will happen, right? That is what will happen. And is that what you want? Is that what you want? Right? Or do you want to give it a shot, and then if the first shot doesn't work, maybe give it a second shot? Is that what you want? Think about that. Think about what you want very clearly. Very clearly. Okay, now, I do actually want to conclude the session today here. Usually I go for an hour, but I do need to attend to clients today. So, I'll wrap this up in a minute. So, if you like my work, subscribe to my YouTube channel, give the video a like, share the video with your friends and families, especially today's presentation. I think is really important and it can save lives. I think the more people that watch this presentation today, the higher chances we can save even more lives, right? The higher chances are that patients and families are empowered. That's what we want here at intensivecare.com. We want to empower our clients and their families. And you can see it on our testimony section that we've empowered a lot of families and clients with very good outcomes. So, and because we're getting so many questions for families in intensive care, that's why we created a membership for families of critically ill patients in intensive care. And you can become a member if you go to intensivecare.com by clicking on the membership link or go to intensivecaresupport.org directly. In the membership, you have access to me and my team 24 hours a day in the membership area and via email. And we answer all questions intensive care related. In the membership, you also have exclusive access to 21 ebooks and 21 videos that help you to make informed decisions, have peace of mind, control, power, influence, making sure your loved one gets best care and treatment. I also do one-on-one consulting over the phone, Zoom, Skype, WhatsApp, whichever medium works best for you. I talk to you and your families directly. I handhold you through this once-in-a-lifetime situation that you can't afford to get wrong. I also do talk to doctors and nurses directly, and I ask all the questions to the doctors and nurses that you haven't even considered asking, but must be asked when you have a loved one critically ill in intensive care. We also do medical record reviews in real time, and we also do medical record reviews after intensive care so that you can get that second opinion while your loved one is in intensive care, or after intensive care, you might need closure, you have unanswered questions, or you're simply suspecting medical negligence, right? And all of that you get at intensivecare.com. You can call us on one of the numbers on the top of our website, or you can send us an email to support@intensivecare.com. With intensive care at home, we are currently operating all around Australia in all major capital cities, as well as in regional and rural areas. We are an NDIS-approved service provider, iCare in New South Wales, NIISQ in Queensland, TAC and WorkSafe in Victoria, DVA all around the country. We have also received funding through public hospitals, private health insurance, as well as departments of health. Now, we are also providing level 2 and level 3 NDIS support coordination, right? And if you're at home already, or you're stuck in an ICU and you want intensive care at home, or you're realizing what you have at home is not working, you don't have intensive care nurses, you're going back into hospital all the time, or your family members going back to hospital, you think you don't have enough funding, you're scared to even ask for more funding, we can help you with all of that with intensive care at home. We've turned so many situations around, including the funding situation, right? If you're an NDI support coordinator watching this, we're also offering nursing assessments, specialist nursing assessments for NDIS participants or for any other funding bodies. If you're looking for nursing care for your participants, please reach out to us, or even if you need help with the advocacy for nursing care, we can help you with that. And if you're an ICU nurse, critical care nurse, and you're looking for a career change, we want to hear from you as well. Please reach out to us at intensivecareathome.com. We currently have jobs in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Albury, Wodonga, Bendigo in Victoria, Warragul in country Victoria as well. And if you're an ICU specialist or ICU consultant, we're also currently expanding our medical team. If you want to reach out to us and do some inspiring and life-changing work, please reach out to us as well. And if you're working in ICU and you have bed blocks as an ICU consultant, once again, we can help you there. The same if you're a hospital executive watching this. If you have bed blocks in your hospital, we can help you with all of that, right? And if you're in the US and in the UK watching this and you need help with intensive care at home, please reach out to us at intensivecareathome.com. We can help you in the US or in the UK privately. Now, I do want to wrap this up. Thank you so much for watching. Leave your comments below what you want to see next so I can schedule another YouTube live with a topic that is of your interest. Thank you so much for watching. This is Patrick Hutzel from intensivecareathome.com and intensivecarehotline.com, and I will talk to you next week. I'll do these YouTube lives once a week, same time. Take care.